Come on. Come on. Looks like you're ready. Click go live. Go live. Hi, everybody. I don't know why I talk like Mr. Nick. What's the character's name from The Simpsons?
Dr. Nick?
Dr. Nick? I think Dr. Nick is the one that talks like that. Anyway, hello. Hi. Hello. This is the Passion of the Nerds Patreon discussion group that we've been doing for years and years now. Link down below if you'd like to join ever. We were just talking about how we've been doing this for years, and there's a group of us that all kind of know each other, and I think that's neat. But I do also love seeing new faces, and never be intimidated. We don't always. There's some freaking geniuses in here, but sometimes also I have nothing to say about the episode, and that's okay too. We're just here to celebrate and have fun and enjoy this thing that we all love.
Yeah, that's what it's about. It's not about intellectual prowess and having interesting things to say. It's all just hanging out and having fun, and yeah,
exactly. So link down below, and I think, did I forget anything, Jack? What are we talking about in 2 weeks? I think it's
Angel something.
Whatever the episode is before Dad. Whenever Russell sees this, he'll shout it out in chat.
I think it might be Dad.
It's not Dad. It's something. It's the episode right before Dad.
Hang on.
Is it Dad? I don't know.
I'm getting it up. It is.
Provider? No, or was that after? I forget.
Is it
Providers later? Provider.
Wait.
Well, I didn't mean for us to get sidetracked by this, but I suppose it's important for us to.
It's too late. Jack has to find the answer.
I think. Hang on. What date would that be? It is Dad.
Is it Dad?
Yeah, it's Dad.
Oh.
23rd. Yeah, it's Dad.
Oh, I'm Josh. I'm sorry, I doubted you.
Yeah, how could you, Ian?
Yeah, I did the schedule earlier today. Anyway, we are trying to pre-schedule these so that they actually inform people at a reasonable time, well in advance, that these are coming. We have scheduled 3 of the next 6. We're hoping by the end of the week to be scheduled out through January. There will be a schedule posted for patrons so that you can take a look and know when what episode is going where. But the other thing is that we have only been getting 1 or 2 people at the Angel Hangouts, which is totally fine. But we have been considering stacking 2 episodes so that we, if that accelerates us through Angel and we spend more time on Buffy faster, if those are the things that people want to show up to, we do that. But I don't know. Maybe we'll think about that and discuss it. That's all I got. Okay. Jack.
Yeah. I'm kidding.
Hello.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. How are you?
Well, we know how I'm doing. Well, we'll say I'm happy to be here.
It's all good. Jackie loves you. It's okay.
While we're here, we're thinking about Buffy. We're not thinking about other things. That sounds good to me.
Yeah. Thinking about Buffy going invisible and doing things to people.
Well, so we're in season 6.
Yes.
Doing things to people.
Yep. That was my polite way of, never mind.
Yeah, the one thing I'm struck by. Well, I'll tell you, right when I said that, I went right to James Marsters' root. We'll call it the root of James Marsters.
Oh, okay. See, that word means something in my country that is
the root.
Yeah. Let's not.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a family show. See, Laura knows what's up.
I think it's weird. I remember this season making me blush, right? This season, compared to the other seasons.
Adorable. You're so adorable.
I mean, you think about Buffy and Angel in Surprise.
Mhm.
Angel, maybe we should. Shh, don't. Or no, Angel says, Buffy, maybe we shouldn't. Don't. They kiss, fall out of frame, and then there's nothing, and you cut to later on. Spike is literally walking around butt-ass naked with, like, strategically placed things just to cover his dangle. So...
His dangle, you are so adorable.
I'm trying to keep it clean. I'm just saying, like, but when we watch the season, I'm like, oh, but in my memory, it lives as much dirtier.
Yeah,
and I don't
mean-
use that in a pejorative way. For instance, the shot at the sink where she's got the lighter in her pocket, when he goes
Yeah.
up and the way she reacts,
That's
there's an
oddly sexual
implication.
because-
It's
yeah,
oddly,
'cause-
not oddly, very sexual.
Well, it's odd because the show is pretty sanitized as things go.
Until
you
this
know?
season.
But it's not. It's still pretty tame, though, in the grand scheme of things. Is my point? Like, it's
yeah,
not.
I think I experience it in contrast to where we've been, and I suppose that keeps sort of naturally flowing in the journey of adulthood. You know, maybe like those early experiences are very nervous and very chaste, and then like hopefully you develop a freedom and a comfort where it just is awesome.
Maybe I was just overexposed to things like that way too early. I didn't have enough of a, I don't know, someone guiding what I was watching, because I was watching like Nightmare on Elm Street when I was 5, and like,
Yeah.
I saw like sex scenes and stuff from a very young age. So when I come around to something like this, I'm like, like I'm not really all that. I've seen much more overtly sexual than
I have as well. I'm just saying, like, I think the context matters, right? Like,
it feels weird in a show like this. It makes you blush because it's so different from what the show typically does.
I mean, like it's a weird thing to focus in on, but like, I mean, Smashed, when they tear down the building is just it, and it's all so implied. There's no, like, it lives in my head more extreme than it actually is. The way it's shot is very out of frame and below the shot, and other than him walking around with the root hanging out,
and it's done quite comically too.
Yeah. Well, until it's not, but yeah.
Well, yeah, until it's not.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say a quick hello to Nathan Coleman, who says that the wife and I started our first rewatch of Buffy in 18 years. I found your channel and loved your breakdowns. Can't stay long, but I had to jump in. Love the channel. Thank you, Nathan. We appreciate you.
I mean, the other comparison, the only, like, you think of the stepping stones. There's the chase, like, Buffy, maybe we shouldn't. No, fall out of frame. But then you get to Riley, and I don't know why, but the episode where they're the humping battery that keeps the power going the entire time, like, that is
the wall.
Wild Things Are.
Wild Things Are. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't like that episode because I don't get it. And then you've got the old lady and I don't get it.
Well, yeah, the episode's terrible, but I'm just talking about,
it's like was it like Sex is Bad is basically what I get from that episode. Sex is Bad.
That arguably the sex that they show in that scene is more on camera than most of the stuff that we see with Spike and Buffy, and yet it feels devoid of any chemistry. It doesn't feel it
that
feels
might be
fake
because of the framing of the shot, and then it's all dark and shadowy, and there's also those really like bizarre long angle like top down shots that make it a bit more surreal, I guess.
But you're also forgetting like the first scene where Buffy and Riley have sex, where the Riley sex face comes from, is awful.
I haven't
it doesn't
seen it in
feel
a
like
while.
two people who are into each other and hot for each other. Like, it feels terrifying.
They didn't have good chemistry at all, really.
No.
Those two. I don't
It's
think...
it's a weird thing to focus on. It's just like it's so, the sexuality is so much more out in the open and playful and
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It just is it feels to me, when I remember these sequences, more than it actually is. And I think the fact that it isn't as explicit as it seems, and it still makes me blush, speaks to the chemistry and the sort of the that when he gets close to her in the kitchen, and I get Twitter pated.
That's the thing. That's the bit that hits me the most in this episode, and her like reaction to it. And it's almost, it's not subtle, but the way
it's so well done.
The way he approaches her, it feels subtle, even though it's not, because she reacts like, my God.
Yeah, it's the way they play off of each other. The way she says "lame" and says "don't get near me," and then he steps close to her, and she, you see like the sexual intensity of that moment is so interesting and well done.
Yeah, and it really goes to show that the Buffy thing is it's a mutual thing. They are bad for each other, but no one's being victimized. No one's being victimized as such. It's they're both in it. They're both doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's and you know, like Buffy's doing her best to be like, no, I don't want this. But there is a part of her that does, you know? It's
well, I mean, the way that they're comparing that to addiction, you know, like for me, a big part of quitting was when I quit drinking was realizing I love drinking. Like, I was waiting to hate it, and I think that some people, their journey is they get to a point where they hate it. I never got to that point. I was just like, I love this, and I can't do this anymore. I can't have this as a part of my life. I can't experience this. So I had to like reconcile with the fact that there was something here for me that I needed to give up in order to be healthy and be the person.
That's basically what Buffy does with the "Goodbye, William" scene. That scene is crushing, by the way. Whew.
Yeah.
When we get to that, I'm gonna have some feels.
Well, I
kind of relate to that scene in a way. But yeah. Anyway,
I kind of stole your thunder a little bit with the hyper focus on.
No, that's a good thing, because as good as this episode is, I don't have a ton to say about it. I might have a bit more to say about it if I did the homework, but I didn't. I was feeling like crap yesterday, and I just didn't do it. I've got no excuse, really. I just wasn't feeling good.
No excuses necessary. I think we've all been there.
But one thing that stood out to me is and I've been saying this for a while, but I think this episode is a good example of it, in that and I touched on it at the rewatch, but I think Warren is truly an awful guy, and I think the other two boys are just kind of lonely, impressionable dudes that want to be a part of something, and that doesn't absolve them of any guilt or, you know, any of that. They're still complicit in horrible things. However, I feel like had they not have met Warren, they wouldn't have gone down the path that they go down.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said there, maybe about addiction for the two of them. I do love the idea here that he literally calls out, "We're the bad guys. We're villains." You know,
like,
Warren
because the other two aren't, basically.
Warren has a clarity to the darkness that they don't. You know, it can be read comically, but watching it back through again, it is darker than I was expecting, especially when you know where it goes.
Want acceptance and, I guess, a status, not like to be on top, but just like, you know, to be appreciated by a group and to have, you know, a certain status, a certain acceptance, and
I think
and we all want that. I don't think that's a bad thing. You know, it's not inherently bad.
I think Andrew
Andrew's the blonde dude. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Andrew becomes a character I find interesting in the next season. I think in this season he's a little bit of a gay joke.
Yeah.
For most of the season.
That's funny because I've never read that character as gay, and I know a lot of people do. Even Tom Lenk himself didn't register that Andrew was
All
gay.
the jokes about Warren towards
Yeah,
the end of the season.
I know, I get it.
Like
I'm
there's,
not
I think it's
I'm
there.
not saying it's not there, but I'm just saying that like yeah, I met Alison Hannigan and Tom Lenk at a convention a couple of years back, and at their panel someone got up and asked Tom like what was it like playing a gay character on Buffy, and I was like, he wasn't gay, was he? Like, so Tom
Yeah, well,
didn't play him like that,
I
you know?
think he missed some jokes
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
that
but
they went through. I mean, let alone uh in I think it's not Superstar, Storyteller, when he's filming
that's a fun
and
episode. Hello, gentle
Kennedy and
viewers.
Willow are making out on the couch and he zooms
Yeah.
in on the sconce. Says, look at what Xander did with this window. He's amazing. That joke is he's not interested in the two women making out on the couch. That's the joke.
But by the way, to be clear, I'm not saying it's not there, and I'm not saying
sure, yeah.
Agree,
I'm surprised that he didn't.
Yeah, like it's pretty obvious now. Now you bring
clearly wants to jump Spike in season 7.
Yeah, yeah. There's a big old crush.
My hot take on season 7 though is I think Andrew should have died over the seal, and we should have had Jonathan. Because
that would have made like
Jonathan
a little more rounded out.
Yeah, and he had more of a connection to the group, and he's just a better character. I'm sorry, I liked him more. I empathized with him more, and I don't know. I think it was such a waste of a great character to kill him.
I kind of agree. Who knows how people's work schedules work out or anything like
exactly.
that. But I like Andrew in season 7.
Yeah, he's fun, but it bugs me that even though the Scoobies have him around and he actively helps them, they still don't let up on him. Even at the very end, he's like, Anya died saving my life, and Xander's like, and a girl always doing the dumb thing or something like that. Like,
yeah, that's classic both those characters though. And it gives Xander a moment to shine and say that to make Xander feel better, to be thinking of someone else.
So when I met Tom Lenk, I think I creeped him out a little because I went a bit too hard with the fanboying stuff. No, I legit think that I made him uncomfortable because he was just kind of. I pick up on vibes very, very easily, but I started raving on about that and how like I hated that the Scoobies like didn't like properly accept Andrew and whatnot. And like, oh yeah, well, you know, he was there anyway, and I could just tell that he's just. I made him really, really uncomfortable, and yeah, I don't know why I just wanted to share that with the group, but yeah, I creeped Tom Lenk out by being too much of a fanboy, and that's fine. Whatever.
Well, you never know. Sometimes you creep them out, and sometimes you become best friends and become part of their community and work on their channel for the next 7 years.
Being an egregious fanboy pays off sometimes. So yeah. But I will say though, one last thing, his performance over the seal is amazing though. The way he starts crying and I killed my best friend. Very, very good. Yeah. But
I love that he has that moment to be built. And I think he gets built next to Spike, but it takes until 7 where he has some more dimensions other than Tucker's brother and the attraction to Warren.
Yeah. I don't dislike him. I just prefer Jonathan, to be honest.
Sure. Well, there's much more meat on that bone.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me go over to Allison and then we'll go to Lady Eternal. Sorry, I forgot to let you know in advance. Replace pin. Hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
Okay.
Yeah. I get it. Tell me about the episode.
I don't know that I have a ton to say about this one, but I was intrigued by something that came up during the rewatch. why is Doris even here? Why is someone even being sent for this? And so,
Oh yeah.
in terms of like uh
Well, let me
Dawn's history in that. Oh,
kind of give some context to why
sure.
that came up to me. I work at a school now, and one thing I see a lot of is trauma and kids in tough situations and kids getting through things, and it just made me think about Dawn's pretty okay. Like,
We know Dawn's pretty okay.
true. Okay, hit me. Tell me what you're thinking.
Couple of different things. One, it's so back when Buffy was in school, Schneider being over the top hard on her was unrealistic, even that was okay, and the show framed it like that. So like the idea that this is a clash between the people who know that there's magic going on and people who don't, and there's mismatch because of that, that is fine. The things that I was kind of thinking about were so the thing I brought up in the discussion chat thing was we do already know that Dawn's principal was on her case for missing a bunch of school after not right after her mother died, but a little further beyond that, and we know Buffy's already been in there for that. We don't we see a little bit of how the Buffy bot performed on Parent Teacher Day, but we don't see all of it. And so the idea that someone might have twigged that as being like, if most people bought it, but someone was like, hey, this person is behaving a little bit weird, that wouldn't surprise me too much or go too far outside of what we saw.
Sure.
And I think that someone brought up this is being triggered by Dawn recently breaking her wrist in the car accident that Willow caused.
Yeah.
And by my count, this is the third incident of Dawn needing medical attention in the past year. So we know that at least the student body is aware of the cutting thing from blood ties.
Oh yeah.
And I find it unlikely that after the end of the gift that she wouldn't have needed some medical attention for so like
Oh yeah, I forgot about the dude on the tower.
she got her
Making her bleed.
stomach slashed with a knife.
Oh yeah, of course.
And it's 2 days after the principal had a sit down with Buffy about you need to be more responsible for your sister. And it's just like, okay, in the world of where Snyder being as hard on Buffy as it is already accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Third instance of some kind of injury home life thing might fix something.
And I also forgot about Dawn's caretaker burned down the gym. You know, Dawn's
Yes.
caretaker had a violent record.
At this point, she is a jobless college dropout who dropped out not quite a year ago, but like
yeah. No, you've given me the context that I wasn't seeing in the episode. I love it.
But like it's not there in the episode. This is just us piecing together after the fact, which is often the case for Dawn parts of stuff. I was planning on once we get to Older and Far Away talking about that some probably when we get to that episode. Just in terms of like Dawn's behavior feels unreasonable, but that's because we don't get enough detail on what's actually going on with her and don't forefront actually what's going on with her.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sort of thing.
Yeah. I it's just funny to me too. I turned 45 2 months ago.
If you turned 45 2 years ago, then you're no longer 45.
I know. That's how I do the math. It's interesting to me the heroes and villains in a teenage show and how your perspective on who's the hero and who's the villain shifts over time as you watch the show. Because watching Doris, I'm like, everything you've just said, I'm like, yeah, they're like that re-emphasizes that she's doing a good thing. she's sort of hard edged and maybe a little non-negotiable in the episode. I think that both she and the principal threaten without intent, with the idea of like, it's very hard to take a kid from their guardian. But Buffy doesn't know that. And so,
Right.
like, there's a famous speech called "Don't Talk to Police," and one of the things that he said was, they're allowed to lie to you. They're allowed to tell you things that aren't true. Like, that's not a crime for the police to do that. And the same holds true with authority figures when talking to Buffy about her, what they're gonna do if she doesn't show up for Dawn or whatever the thing may be. So,
Right,
but I
yeah.
have an empathy for Doris in this episode.
Oh, yes.
I don't think I had the first time or two I watched the episode, but the more I watch it, the more I'm like, Buffy's the villain here, you know?
Yeah, Buffy. So it feels like Buffy's being overly mean to in the way she's handling with Doris. Like, do you really need to make
Destroy
it seem
her
like she's
career?
losing her mind?
Yeah.
I guess it's because you have to not in order to walk back what's happening here, you have to not just destroy her notes of what she was there, but also destroy her credibility of her own verbal account of what she saw, and in order to get a redo to happen.
Yeah.
And so like, but yeah, it's mean.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it fits within the plot. I think it was Josh said during the rewatch, this is Buffy trying on evil, or rather trying on no conscience. The being invisible gives her the opportunity to not have to take responsibility for her actions and herself. So it's the the trying on the soulless version of herself, temporarily, just indulging in the relationship with Spike rather than worrying about it or any of that. It's interesting. I kind of love this episode. This might be one of my favorite David Fury episodes, especially. But anyway, sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. I love your reading. Do you have anything else on this one you want to throw out there?
I don't think so.
All right. Let me go over to Lady Eternal, and then we'll go to Lauren. Hello.
Hi, sorry about that.
You're good. It always takes me a moment to hit replace pin anyway.
So, this episode.
Yeah. It's heavier than it seems. And I kind of love that. It's like, if Band Candy were about animal abuse, like, for lack of a better thing, like, I'm just saying, like, this seemingly on the surface of it lighthearted, cheerful episode has this horrible, dark theme to it. This whole idea of her, is she suicidal? Does she wish she were dead? Is what this is about. This is like the grappling with the themes, but doing it in the way that it does is one of the things makes this show unique.
Yeah, it's an interesting way that they kind of tie the episode together at the end, where it all of a sudden just drops on top of you that this whole episode has been, Buffy has been basically finding an outlet of joy in the idea of being invisible and therefore immune from consequences for her behavior for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's something to that, especially when she is when they're yanking the can down the road with the string because she's supposed to be kicking it. And she's saying, Spike keeps going on and on about he's the only one that understands me, and yet he threw me out when I'm there and I'm enthusiastically participating. What the heck is wrong with him? And it's what's really interesting about that is that on this rewatch in particular, seeing it with the lens that I have from the perspective of the years that I have now.
Yeah.
In that moment, she was just wanting to cut loose and be free, and she didn't understand why Spike wasn't wholeheartedly embracing that, when that's all he ever seems to tell her he wants her to do, is to cut loose and have fun and do the things that she wants to do, just like Faith used to tell her. Cut loose, you know you want to, you know you're capable of it. Well, now she is, and she doesn't understand why it's not being embraced. And it's because everybody that actually does know her is saying, yeah, but the only reason you're doing it is because you're invisible. You have a buffer between you actually cutting loose and anybody seeing you cut loose and realizing that you're doing it and you're finding joy in something.
The expectations of who you're supposed to be versus just being yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. And the invisibility giving her a buffer between those things, where she views it as she has the freedom to do that now. Spike is seeing that as it's a way to hide from the fact that she's doing that, which I think is really interesting, because
Spike's so emotionally insightful, and it's so selfishly used. Like it's amazing. He's such an interesting character. He's been one of the most empathetic and emotionally manipulative characters on the show.
Yes.
And to see that in this context is so interesting.
Yes, which is why at this point he's, known as the, vampire equivalent of a wet cat on Tumblr. But but at the same time, like when he showed up at the house that morning looking for his lighter, like, yes, okay, he probably legitimately was looking for the lighter. Those are expensive lighters. Those Zeppo lighters are expensive things, man. You don't just lose them. And who knows how long he's had the thing. So he probably did actually want to find the lighter. But going there was also an excuse to see her when Dawn was going to be at school and Willow was going to possibly be in class or maybe out at the magic box. And maybe he was going to catch Buffy alone at a time when she wouldn't ordinarily be, and he might be able to have some time with her. But then the social worker shows up and he's absolutely no help.
Well, especially looking the roadie for Metallica that she picked up.
To be fair, that wouldn't be a detraction from everybody's book.
Not for everybody. Yeah, we don't know what Doris finds interesting.
But then when he realizes that it's gone pear-shaped and he's hearing this woman threatening to put Buffy in a position where she's going to take Dawn away, he comes back in and he's trying to be there emotionally for her, and then she just throws him out.
Yeah.
So it's like there's an unselfishness to that at the same time that there is a selfishness to that, because who knows if he would have tried to then manipulate Buffy's emotional vulnerability into something else.
I was thinking about that. Spike in this episode has rushed to understanding Buffy in a way that neither she nor the Scoobies are seeing yet. In some ways, via his empathy and perception, he sees the whole problem. He's the only one, like, he knew about everything beforehand. He sees that she's trying to escape. He sees the whole thing, but he's using that information for his own ends. He's not trying to help her heal or process her trauma or have her sort of pass through these emotions that are clogged and stuck. It's about time with her for him. And I think, the challenge that I've sort of inarticulately managed over time is like the idea of selfish love versus unselfish love. And of course, Spike gets to, it has nothing to do with me. It's who you are, how hard you try. That speech shows that he's crossed from he's always empathetic. He always understands. He always sees things. But we can see the use of it here. He's not trying to heal her. He's not trying to help her be better, to help her feel powerful and strong again. If anything, in Dead Things, he's pulling her in the opposite direction on the balcony sequence.
And the
And
interesting
that's the selfish, unselfish, I think. It's not the lack of empathy. It is the use of it.
the interesting thing about that is that in character, the explanation could very easily be that because of when he died and how long he was in a very toxic environment that had no use for the idea of processing trauma or processing those kind of emotions, and in fact didn't indulge any of those emotions, saw those emotions as a humanizing weakness when you're supposed to be a demon for all of that time. And then when he was human on top of it, the idea of that was a completely alien notion. So then coming into the situation that he's in and being put in a position of not being able to indulge in the ultraviolence unless it's against demons, dealing with Buffy and the Scoobies and Dawn, he's groping his way towards an understanding that his ability to weaponize his empathy isn't gaining him what it used to be able to.
Not yet. Well, it is currently, but there's a point where it ceases to work. And that's where the weapon switches to violence.
Yeah. But at the same time, the idea that Dawn would be taken away is something he knows would be legitimately distressing. And he was standing there looking like he was gonna try to be there for Buffy for half a minute. I thought you might want to, but she cuts him off.
It was very earnest.
Yeah, because that is a point where he is unselfishly compassionate when it comes to Dawn.
Well, he loves her. He absolutely loves her. Yeah.
He does. And Dawn, by the way, in this episode, she gets a lot of flack for acting like a brat. But honestly, when I look at Dawn in this episode especially, she is dealing with perfectly understandable teenage emotions of, because for lack of better terms, Willow's addiction isn't to a substance that doesn't affect Dawn. It's not to alcohol or drugs that Dawn has no attachment to. Buffy's literally talking about taking her mother's possessions that could imply something magical or inspire thoughts of a magical nature and putting them away, taking away things that Dawn has gotten used to herself and finding comfort in, candles and incense and crystals. You know what? Crystals are beautiful. I've got them all over my house. I love them. My mother has a collection of the shaped eggs that she inherited from an aunt that are semi-precious stone. They're just beautiful things to have around, and all of a sudden everything's getting packed up and put away. And Dawn is in that moment feeling like she's catching the side effect of a punishment for Willow's inability to maintain control.
Yeah.
And Buffy, for focusing on herself, I think is more Buffy's interpretation than actually what Dawn is feeling. I think what Dawn is feeling is not that Buffy should have caught what was going on with Willow and didn't until Dawn broke her wrist. It's that she's not blaming Buffy for being self-absorbed. I think she's angry with Buffy because Buffy's not opening up about the things that are bothering her that are the reason why she didn't catch it. Yeah. Dawn is feeling completely cut out and sidelined and punished for the actions of the adults in her life.
Dawn's the only one that calls anyone on anything in the episode. And I mean, I agree with you. Buffy's the brat in this episode, not Dawn.
Yeah, but Dawn catches that bratty label because she's not talking to Buffy, and she's like, Buffy, you're being a jerk, and she's I can't talk to you right now, and she's turning around and freaking out and storming out of the room every 5 minutes. But she's a teenager.
Yeah.
And she's only technically a teenager because she got pressed into the form of a teenager a year and a half ago.
I love I'm not sure if it was you or Lauren who said in the rewatch that her wearing like the chain with her name on it is because she deals with identity issues because she wasn't real a year ago.
That was Lauren, I think, but it's absolutely correct.
Yeah, I love that reading. I do need to move on. Josh, though, put in chat about Spike, and I like this. He wants to be there for Buffy, but he wants Buffy to remain in an emotional state where he can be there for her. And I agree with that. I think the shotgun on the back porch and Buffy's vulnerability is a beautiful scene, but that scene for Spike is also that Spike gets to be there for her. It's sort of like toxic compassion or selfish compassion, if such a thing can exist. There are, in the discussion about Spike, there are a number of things that people bring up as examples of like, well, he's not selfish here. What about this one? So on and so forth. And the one that I struggle with in terms of the selfish interpretation idea is him protecting Dawn and him in the summer while Buffy is gone. I think that one, if you're going to come from the perspective of everything Spike does is conscience-free or selfish, him protecting Dawn the whole summer after Buffy has died is hard to fit in that interpretation and mold. We're
gonna keep coming back and coming back and coming back because, of course, Spike is now in the title sequence, so he's now a main character. But I think that one of the things that makes Buffy so compelling across the board, and we've said it before, is the complex characters. And Spike is, in this season especially, is one of the most complex characters on the show.
Yeah.
But justice for Doris. She got done dirty, not just by Buffy being petty, but also by the fact that she was placed in one of the tropes I hate the worst out of all of them, and it's the badly timed social worker visit so that everything that you do is immediately cast in the worst light imaginable, and the social worker has no capacity to understand that maybe they caught you on a bad day, and yeah, maybe the house is going to be a little messy, and maybe things are not going to be shiny perfect, but the walls are up, the heat is on, the kid's been fed. So, I hate that trope. I hate it with a blinding passion. And Doris got done dirty because she got put in the middle of it.
I also really like that actress.
Yes, she's really good. Yeah. And Josh's comment that her boss might be new to Sunnydale because he seems like he's far too, skeptical. There's also the distinct possibility that his reaction was just, okay, so if anybody here experiences anything unusual as a result of a visit, we're going to give them the day off. We're going to send them to their doctor. We're going to send somebody else to redo it because maybe it's the house or maybe something is particularly haunting you today and we need to send somebody else to do a double check because this is Sunnydale. Weird stuff happens here.
Well, I appreciate you. Let me go over to Lauren. Lauren.
Yeah. I feel like most social workers are just doing their best with like limited resources and stuff, but I think it fits in with like, the Buffyverse having that very negative view of institutions and stuff. But I like to think that Doris was just trying to scare Buffy into like, I feel like you could be doing better, and maybe if she sort of says I'm going to watch you and stuff, that maybe Buffy will sort of get the kick up the ass that she thinks she needs. Because I think really she probably couldn't take her away.
I think I think I'm overreading. I don't think that I think it would be a stretch to say that Doris is an expression of the show's feelings about social work. It's a trope. Like it's she is there to dispense conflict so that conflict can exist in the story. And it's just interesting to me again how as I age, I'm like, oh no, Doris is a do-gooder in this. Yeah.
Yeah, like people who like try to look out for the welfare of children are usually like people with moral sense. Yeah.
Yeah, you put it in those terms, it's like, No, there's two perspectives here, but even that I find interesting and I appreciate about the show. But tell me about the episode. Feelings you have about the episode.
I'm just going to get back to the Dawn thing before I forget it.
Sure.
One of the things I was thinking about, I think it was the last time we had a Buffy discussion. It's like Dawn at the start of the season had the Buffy bot who was kind of doting on her, and then Spike who was doting on her, and then suddenly she's lost both of those relationships as well because Spike is no longer focused on her the second Buffy came back. And the Buffy bot is no longer, and because Buffy's dealing with all her crap, she's not really able to be there for Dawn right now. So
it's
Dawn's
interesting.
Not really her focus, so.
I wonder if Dawn has the life that Buffy thought she wanted in the first 2 seasons of the show. Less oversight, less parenting, doesn't need that level of parenting, doesn't need Giles watching her the entire time, and you sort of see the results or that sense of isolation and abandonment. If that was actually the case, I don't think that was the intent of the reading, but it is interesting to see. Dawn has the freedom and the lack of oversight that Buffy thought she always wanted, and it's having a detrimental effect because obviously it has a detrimental effect,
Yeah, and I guess Giles going as well. Yeah, good point.
But those first 2 or 3 seasons are very much about I don't need this level of hands-on parenting. Joyce grounding her, and Band Candy is Joyce and Giles both trying to figure out Buffy's schedule. And in this season, Dawn has the opposite of all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she already lost Buffy once, so she's like when something like that happens, like all the stuff that's happened to her in just a year, her feeling very
it's a trauma flashback.
Yeah, exactly, like that sort of like, oh shit, what, like you're so conscious of like the only person you've got left might leave you. And then, I think her behavior just makes sense, but I have to say when I watched it the first time through, I don't think I picked up on the suicide theme as much because I sort of thought of it as like they've done this to her, but I feel like it gives her the opportunity to sort of try it on, like, from like I don't really want to live to like actually consciously thinking of suicide. I think is like what the episode sort of gives the opportunity for Buffy to try on.
I think that there are two. I think that, I mean, at least the way I experienced depression, there is a tipping point where depression gets deep and dark enough that either you experience moments of, if I hadn't woken up, that would have been okay. But I'm not looking to take actual steps to end my life. And I think I wouldn't describe Buffy as suicidal at any point during this season necessarily, but this is the closest she comes. And I think that tipping point that might exist in depression, which I'm purely speaking from anecdotally, can go from one, then, I'm upset that I woke up this morning, to then thinking about taking action. Right. But there is this sort of area where depression has taken so much that you're just sort of disappointed and exhausted in having to live. And this is this is the most joy she's expressed this season when she's not there. And I think in metaphor that works as her considering never waking up, the idea of not being back in her life. It's played for yucks. It's mostly played for jokes, but I think that it works surprisingly well. The contrast of her joy to everything else that we've seen her have to deal with, and sort of her normal state. Like the fact that this plays so light, I think actually works in the theme of her consideration about, do I want to live? Which at the end she says, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people who are sort of making a decision. Like a lot of people, their friends and family members will say like suddenly they were better. Like, you know, they've been down for months. They, you know, they have a day where they seem light and happy like their old self again because they've made a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, because
like,
all
that's
the
kind of what I think of when I look at the like the
Yeah.
metaphor. It's sort of like that lightness of fuck it. I've just, you know, she's not quite there, but at the same time, like it could mirror that, and I feel like that's an interesting.
Well, I think it's all the anxiety and stress and considerations that worry you, and you put all the weight on them and all of that. You consider them sort of all disappearing all at the same time, and there is joy that ensues from just the lack of pain. All of a sudden, all those things you're afraid about lighten and go away. But it's a temporary experience, and I think that's the experience of this episode. Is I don't have to worry about any of those things. But, you know, she did have a choice when she listened to that voice message. She could have walked off into the sunset, and that would have been the end. She had to make a choice to live or die, and that is expressed in the episode itself. She made the choice to live. She doesn't know where things are going at this point, but she decided that she doesn't want to die. So there's a choice expressed in the episode, and I think that's powerful and interesting. But you do have to look. It's there's lots of nerd invisibility jokes and things of that nature here. But again, it's kind of something I love about this show is even the breather episodes have that kind of often have that kind of depth.
Yeah, and her relationship with Dawn sort of being the thing that helps her find the meaning, it sort of comes up in this episode, but like with the prospect of Dawn being taken away from her is the thing that gets her to the darkest point in the episode, like that early on, where not even Spike offering comfort is like she's like, you know, just go, like why won't you go? Because she's so upset. But I also like what they're doing with the sort of Willow is doing it the hard way in this episode, but Buffy I think is not capable of trying to do the sort of cold turkey at this point. Like I think I like that she needs Spike to get through the episode. Like I think that's very realistic, and it's sort of where she's at this point.
Well, there's there's relapse built into the season from the beginning. Her putting the lighter in and ties the Spike to the idea of quitting magic, and she needs to quit Spike, and all of that. That's, you know, I was talking to Lani about it during the break. We use the term sort of heavy-handed or on the nose in a very pejorative sense, but I think like this season kind of runs in contrast to that in that, it's heavy-handed and I don't care. You know, it all kind of works for me. And some experiences and some sort of you know, some experiences just are what they are. In that way. So I don't know. I like it.
Yeah. I think it's no coincidence that this is the only time Spike and Buffy ever seem to be amorous in the bed, because again, she's invisible, doesn't have to deal with consequences.
That's very interesting. It's usually on the floor or
exactly, because the bed is boyfriend territory. She doesn't want him to be boyfriend. And then like I think that gets repeated a few times because they keep commenting on like we missed the bed again, and then what happens at the end of As You Were, the bed gets blown up. It's like the prospect of him and her boyfriend is blown up with her realizing he's just plain old Spike, who's, you know, trying to get money the easy way by dealing in nuclear weapons or whatever we would call those.
The demon eggs.
Yeah, and on that early scene in the kitchen, I actually appreciate, like, as much as you were saying like it makes you blush and stuff, one of the things I appreciate what they're doing with like the sex scenes, I guess, this season is that they are showing it in a much more adult way, like as in so many shows, and I guess it's only more recent, like you finally start to see oral and fingering and other things at all, because it used to be just like kissing and then people fall on beds. There's nothing that exists between these two things, and you're like, oh, come on.
It feels it feels more real without necessarily trying to be titillating or anything like that. It doesn't feel exploitative. It just feels like these two people are into each other, and this is what that looks like when these two people are into each other. I like it. You know, it feels kind of unique. Like all the Riley stuff was so loaded with cliche that it was empty of substance.
I'm glad you brought up Where the Wild Things Are, because like I literally, when I watched that episode, I pretty fast forward the sex scenes. I don't even like watching them. Like it's in
no.
The whole thing feels so forced. I don't believe them. I don't believe the chemistry. And it's just like literally like, no, more is more, guys. I don't want to see it.
Well, it's just interesting. It's like I've tweeted previously about sex scenes that drive plot or character. Like what sex scenes are vital for the plot or actually reveal or foster character. Because that to me is the kind of the measure of like ones that should be in there and ones that are just in there to see two people having sex. And like the example that I always go back to is Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese in Terminator. You know, and it's done in a very sort of 80s titillating kind of way, but that scene creates the savior. And it's a scene about it's a movie about fighting machines from the future, and here are these two characters finding warmth and solace with each other. Like that's an example to me of a scene that adds to the characters in the story.
Nerd. Can I give a take on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Terminator 1, right? If Kyle's from the future, the only person who can't possibly be John Connor's father is Kyle, right? Like
the paradox.
How does that make sense? But then they won in the first one. In number 2, they lost to the machines because he fucked up the thinking of time by being the dad. It actually is really fascinating because, like, I know some people are like, oh no, that doesn't make any sense in terms of like, you know, time slices or time travel or whatever. But I actually think that it does, and it's actually amazingly clever because it's like John isn't the savior then because they screwed up what was meant to happen.
I like it. It's too bad they never made more than the first two because those two are classics. I bet they could have done more with those movies. Anyway,
okay. Yeah, sorry. Before I get all distracted, there was something else I was going to say now.
Well, okay, anyway, the reason why I brought up Terminator is the idea of like, sex scenes included that drive character or plot. I think when you look at the Riley scenes, they do nothing. They don't add character. They don't drive plot. Yeah. Like because Riley's another
point though.
Go ahead.
They're fighting machines. Like it's sort of showing the humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't know. I don't think I mind that sex scene, but like as much as what's it, the 80s? Because it's the same guy who did Titanic, isn't it?
Yeah, Cameron.
The hand, but
yeah, it's the way it's shot.
You don't actually see that much though. Like as far as sex scenes go, I feel like that one's not too bad.
Sure. Yeah.
Josh
just did the face off on me.
You just did the what?
The face off. Have you seen Face Off?
I don't think I have.
It's the weirdest gesture. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We'll talk about it later. Okay, I don't want to take up ahead of time. Give me one more thing you have about the episode.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I thought, again, on this sort of theme of Spike being the sort of maladapted coping mechanism, I think it's clear that he is playing this protective role in this episode, that he gets upset and throws Buffy out at the point where she says, you know, free of this life. Yeah, got another name for that, death. And that's when he gets upset with her. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of showing that he doesn't just
again, he's calling out the themes there so articulately, like being undead, being like him, being free of conscience, not being a part of your life. Like it's so great.
I feel like he's kind of drawn to her though because she's not like him. Like he doesn't actually want her to be him. Like he could have vamped her at many points of this thing if he wanted to, but you know.
Yeah, he hasn't pulled out the handcuffs yet. I think the handcuffs are in
yeah, that's Dead Things.
Dead Things, yeah. Which is like, ugh, that's a level.
Yeah, but I like that he's there. That's the point at which he sort of like throws her out, and it's like, it's not just he wants sex at any cost with her at all times or anything else. Like there's there is still emotions attached to it, and he's not happy that she wants to die. Like, that actually makes him very upset.
No, and I like the reading that Josh had about he wants to help her, but he wants her to need him to help her.
Yeah, well, because if she was healthy, she'd kick him to the curb, and he knows that.
Exactly. And on the journey of mind and heart says it seems like the point of the first Riley sex scene is to show Dr. Walsh is a creep. That is in there, but I would argue like there's a lot more to that scene than just Dr. Walsh being a creep. It could have been a lot shorter and cut. That's such a weird sex scene.
The other thing I would say about the Buffy Riley stuff is like they don't actually want the fandom to ship them, so I think a lot of it's very deliberate. That it doesn't. Even though it's hard to point out exactly why it's so terrible, they kind of want it to be terrible. Like, but Riley was never Endgame. Like, he was not the intention to have them end up.
I think that. Yeah, well, I think the writers of their own admission didn't know how to write a character like Riley, like that isn't all weird and tortured and messed up. You know, like how do you write Steve Rogers and make him interesting? And I think that Steve Rogers is interesting in opposition to his world. Like he's in a contrast to her, but Buffy is the hero already. So having another hero is just kind of boring. Until they get into the later stuff where I think Riley's most interesting in season 5, where he's an ass. But that gives him something to do.
I like that season 5. I think the mask drops on his misogyny because it was always there, but it was like a bit more covered over under the nice guy, blah, blah, blah. And then his reaction to she doesn't need me and she doesn't love me as much as I love her, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, it initially emerges as insecurity. That she's more powerful and killed more than he is. Yeah.
Really right.
Yeah.
Can I one more thing? Sorry, like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Where the Wild Things Are, as much as I don't like that episode, I don't think it was executed very well. Like, I thought the idea behind it was fine, like that, these kids grow up in this home and they're all repressed, and this woman's very, religious and indoctrinates them or whatever, and so the energy is meant to be in the house or whatever. Like, I thought that could have been an interesting idea. I feel like the execution was like really bad. It's confusing, and you're like, what the fuck? Why are kids drowning in bathtubs? And like, why are they
very confusing?
But there's some interesting character stuff in that episode. Like Anya and Spike start having a conversation that basically ends up coming to fruition in entropy. Like they're sitting on a couch and he's like, I've got to kill Drew and you've got to kill Xander. And Spike is actually wearing the Paisley shirt that he's wearing, and Buffy gives him the big smackdown in Dead Things. It's literally, there's a lot, like it seems very deliberate, like that it.
They are the highlight of that episode, for sure. Like there are bad episodes in the realm of I, Robot You, Jane, and I say this admitting that good bad is subjective, right? And I know some people enjoy that episode, but we'll say like the high camp, the ones that feel nothing like the show that we enjoy. She is another one. I Fall to Pieces, An Angel, so forth. Like they just feel sort of from a different show. And then there are the bad episodes when the show is hitting on all cylinders and understands its identity, and there's even good writing in those episodes themselves. And I think I, Robot You, or not I, Robot You, Jane, Where the Wild Things Are is one of those where these writers know the show, know the characters flat. They know the flavor of the show. The directors have it down. That scene between Spike and Anya is very important for where things go. It's just, bad in the sense of not up to snuff with the rest of the episodes, changes as the show learns and understands itself. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like the later seasons of Star Trek, The Next Generation, when they're bad, they're just boring. They're not just campy terrible. They're just kind of dull. But the show knows its look, its theme, its feel, its, the actors have it down, all of that. It just feels sort of paint by numbers. And I feel like that applies to Buffy as well. It's just different. I would say the last like bad episode is Doomed. And even Doomed has one or two funny things in it, but the Doomed is technically broken in terms of because of all the writers were at a
marriage. If you're going to do like a mid-season apocalypse, you've got expectations that something's going to be like good And then you're like, what the fuck? This is
And then he catches her on a wire and pulls him up or pulls her out with his bare hands and all. Like there's just so much wrong with Doomed. But like,
Spike is probably the only good thing about that episode, which is hilarious.
Yeah, again, even that has good stuff. So
him learning that he can hit things and stuff. But yeah, and then the little memory lane back to the school and everything.
Again, whenever I start saying certain episodes are bad, I get a million people telling me they love that episode.
Doomed is one of the ones I
well, I do need to move on. I appreciate your time. Let me go over to Josh. Hello.
How's it going, Ian?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. That sounded like I wasn't, or that it was perfunctory, or that I didn't care, but none of those things are true. I'm glad to hear that. Tell me about Go On. There's a million places we could start with this one.
Oh, gone. Oh, I also didn't really care for it initially. I watched Buffy as it was airing. Yeah, and I was late middle school, early high school, I think, when this episode came out. And so I was really like vibing with the whole invisibility thing, and I was like, yeah, like, Spike, why are you trying to harsh Buffy's good time, man? Like, the wood that is dead. No, it's not. She's fucking invisible.
Literally.
You wet blanket. And then getting later on in the episode when they're all like, she'll be pudding. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess there's some danger here. And then at the end, Buffy has that, conversation with Willow that middle school Josh just really glossed over.
No, I see that reading because it's the contrast of the heavy theme versus the lighthearted comedic touch. And David Fury is very lighthearted comedic most of the time, at least on Buffy. But that it almost feels like, okay, for the people that aren't necessarily picking up on the metaphor, we've got to have the decay, whatever thing. Then later on, as you retrospectively go back, you're like, oh, I see what Spike's saying, which is weird, right?
Yeah. No, like when I went back through as an adult and I was watching this episode, I was like, holy shit, Buffy is depressed as hell.
Yeah.
And like her realization at the end of I didn't want to die being a very incremental step up from I'm not sure I want to live.
Yeah.
Really hit, in a very emotional and affecting kind of a way. Yeah. And especially when you marry that with Willow's struggles throughout the episode of using like literal forensics instead of magic, it all works very well as an episode, and it's delivered so subtly and so palatably that it's easy to just get stuck on the icing and miss the cake.
I mean, I suppose I really understand people who don't like this season because it's so not what you signed up for, right? The first 3 seasons of the show are Magic Degrassi Junior High, for lack of a better, it is, especially Buffy and Angel. It is magic soap opera, with punchy kicky stuff. Like at least that is, you could take that reading of it when you watched it, and then you get to the existential crisis as an adult season. And I was like, this does not feel fun. And I always wonder if I don't know if people need to have experienced what she goes through this season in order to love it or relate to it in the same way. I don't know. But everyone I talk to who loves this season the way I do are like, yeah, that was my 30s, man. Like I really felt that.
Like I'm rewatching as an adult, in my post-divorce 1-bedroom apartment that has boxes in one corner that I can't stand to unpack yet. And I'm just like, crying over a pylon that's disintegrating into pudding, and it is very much a season that is very deeply resonant if you have gone through specific things.
You just precisely described the first time I watched the show. I had enough energy to get from the bed to the couch. I watched episode after episode, and I remember looking over at the bookshelf at the empty gaps on the bookshelf that were her books that she took when she moved out, and just that being the memory of that being the visual metaphor of like that bookshelf used to be complete and now half of it is gone. And then sort of watching this show and hitting this season and being like, oh my God, the cone turned into pudding.
Pudding.
Yeah, I was in the same boat, man.
So I think for people who haven't been through the shit or haven't been through this specific shit, let me say that, it can be a season that really calls upon empathy. Like it's a season that requires folks to kind of think outside themselves and think outside their expectations. And I mean, you guys were doing a really good job of deconstructing Dawn earlier. Like Dawn, but when I come across people who are annoyed by Dawn, I'm left wondering if they've ever met a teenage girl before.
Oh, like and Dawn, 100%, I will say my first time through the show, I was annoyed by Dawn.
Yeah, and
she has grown on me on rewatches.
Such an easy, kind of initial impression to have.
Yeah.
First time I watched the show, I was Michelle Trachtenberg's age as she was filming it, so I had a huge crush on Dawn. But it's such an easy initial reaction to have.
Sure.
And as you go back and you rewatch as an adult, I've spent a career working in higher education and, working with college freshmen, and I'm looking at Dawn and I'm like, yeah, those are my students.
Yeah.
That's what they deal with. That's what they go through. Like, everything is an emergency. Everything is just adding to the pile of evidence of how awful the world is to them. And, hopefully they get, or we all got the kind of support that we needed in order to move through that and move past it.
Some days I wonder, and some weeks. But anyway, is there anything else you want to throw out?
Well, this episode also really adds to my whole, I guess, hair to split on the nature of the metaphor of Willow's addiction, because Willow even is trying to treat her addiction like a substance abuse in this episode, where she's trying to go cold turkey on magic in a way that a lot of us have gone cold turkey on alcohol or cigarettes or I don't know, cake frosting or something. It isn't working very well for her, as we can see, because
can you kind of define the difference? You mentioned this in the rewatch, and
if you
tell me the contrast.
If you got a substance addiction or if you have a substance abuse disorder, you're ingesting something. You're taking something into your body. You're drinking alcohol, you're smoking, you're shooting, you're snorting, you're whatevering. Then there are what are called process addictions or behavioral addictions. So there's a 12-step group for a lot of different things. Like there's an Overeaters Anonymous, there's a Sex Addicts Anonymous, there's a Workaholics Anonymous, there's a Rageaholics Anonymous. Like it goes on. And thinking about Overeaters Anonymous, like the point of that program isn't stop eating food because food is bad for you. Like that's physically impossible for, most of us anyway. It is change your relationship to food. You must develop a healthy relationship with food. Whereas in Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or something, it's stop drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And so Willow is trying to treat it like AA, and she's like, stop doing magic. But we know, because Giles told us all the way back in season 2 that channeling such potent magics to yourself, you open a door you might never be able to close. And like, so and season 7 validates this perspective with the approach
the magic
to Giles.
is a part of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So right now, Willow hasn't fully grasped what it is that she's dealing with. And she definitely, and you called this out during the live stream, she definitely isn't addressing any of her like fundamental behaviors.
No.
Or any of her emotional concerns or mental health concerns. She's just like, if I stop doing magic, that'll fix it.
Yeah. There's no owning the consequences of what you did or what your actions were. And frankly,
Yeah.
I mean, like we've seen on the loops that I've built into certain videos, that's never been there. There's shame and embarrassment, but there's never like owning how her actions affected other people.
Yeah.
You know, it's just the spell didn't work right.
Yeah, if only I was better at magic.
Right.
Then
Oz wouldn't leave.
Then Oz wouldn't leave. Then Xander and I wouldn't be, playing tongue hockey with each other, like all that kind of stuff. It's tongue hockey. Is that not a phrase? Okay. All right. Well,
I think it's tonsil hockey was the one you were
Thank
going
you.
for. Yeah.
Thank you. So yeah, it's very fascinating in this episode, and I was commenting in before we got started here that this episode is heavy, but not that deep. And I kind of think that I've proved myself wrong as I've been talking this evening, because there's a little bit more to it than I think I even give it credit for now as an adult.
It's just so. I think that the nerds are so camp.
Yes.
Until they aren't, they are comic book camp in a way that makes this all seem a little insubstantial.
But
that works to great effect in Dead Things for sure.
I call myself out as a nerd, but like Jonathan and Tucker's brother are very much like Golden Age comic book supervillains. They're mustache twirling Lex Luthor. Yeah. And Warren is not. Warren is very much a Bronze Age supervillain.
Sociopath.
Yeah, in the context of the fact that they're in a Bronze Age style comic book universe.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. Is there anything else you want to throw out about the episode?
Buffy's hair is great.
It's so cute. It's definitely a wig in the opening bit. That stuck out to me, but yeah, really, really good. Cindy, I don't like the trio either, but I like what they represent and what they're there to say. All right. Well, I guess we are done. We did it. In 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about Dad. And
I don't know if we're ready for that conversation.
The Angel episode, Dad.
The Angel episode. Oh, not my dad. The Angel episode, Dad. And I think that's it. So everyone in the stream, thank you to everyone here.
Thanks, friends.
Jack, you were trying to remember a line that Tara said about trust needing to be reestablished. I think you were thinking about that in the rewatch.
Yes.
That's from her speech to Willow at the end of Entropy.
Oh, it is.
She, trust needs to be rebuilt.
And
it's a long, important. It's a long, important. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just be kissing me?
Yeah. Oh God.
That one's seared on my brain.
Yeah.
that scene is seared on my brain.
Me too, but clearly not as much as you.
No.
All right. Well, that's quite the note to end on. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.